In this video, we're going to start talking about bookbinding. I'm going to go over the rule book that I recently created, which is spiral bound. I'm going to talk about the two books that I'm going to start working on next, which is basically taking these little character expansion pamphlets and turning them into hardback books. We're going to do a flip through of Hall of the Hag Queen and a little bit of an update on some of the projects that Little Monk is working on. With all that we have to cover, let's get into this. Welcome to Solitary RPG. The first thing we're going to talk about in bookbinding is spiral binding books. This is a very common thing seen in tabletop miniature games and also in role-playing games, and it's a pretty accessible way for anyone to have a book bound. If you're dealing with a PDF, you simply print it out, you take it over to the office store, they'll punch it for the plastic spiral binding. Normally you can have a clear cover put on it and a black plastic back cover put on it to protect the pages, and it's done. It takes very little time. The spiral binding itself is inexpensive. I think you can get it done for, I don't know, $5 to $7 depending on which store you're going to. And it actually works really good, especially in miniature gaming when we're referring to books a lot for army construction and you're flipping the pages. You can get a true lay flat book. It just sits on the table and you can refer to it. And it's the only way you can fold a book onto itself like this so that you're not taking up as much table space. So there are some advantages to it. One of the challenges I've found, though, with spiral binding books is normally when you go to the office store, the plastic spiral binding is really tight. And when you open up the pages, they're usually kind of folding in on each other or touching each other because they use the smallest size possible. I always ask them to use a larger spiral binding so that way my pages aren't folding in on each other. Yes, it takes up more space and it's not as appealing because it's so big and bulky, but it saves the pages. I've found over the years of doing this, it just saves the pages. They're not touching each other, and that's something that's very common. So if you do have something spiral bound, you may want to ask them to use a larger binding spiral. Go up a size or two just so you don't have that problem. You're also going to notice I don't have a clear cover or clear back. I made my own covers using some of the bookbinding processes. And what I want to do is kind of walk you through a little bit of how I prepared my documents. So this is the first photo, and you can see the book in the forefront that was spiral bound because I don't have a punch for spiral binding books, so I had to take it to the office store and had them do it. And you also see the two cover pages in the back, so I had to print those out on 11 by 17 sheets because I needed the extra page material so that I could actually fold the page material over when I was making the covers. And I'm not going to go into the actual process of making the covers in this video. I'm going to save that for another video. But this is where I started. Had to print the covers in larger paper and had to have the office store spiral bind the book for me. This is my paper cutter. It's a guillotine style paper cutter. I bought it from Amazon because that's the only place I could find something like this. None of the office stores in my local area carried anything like this, and Amazon had it. The reason I went with this particular brand is because it was the only one on Amazon that you could buy replacement blades for. And that's important if you're going to be getting into a lot of paper cutting, because if they go dull, you need to take them out and have them sharpened. So having an extra blade available, just sitting in storage in my house, that way when the blade goes dull, I can just remove it, put a new blade on, and then take the old blade in for sharpening. The challenge so far is I don't know any place that does blade sharpening, and I'm going to have to find some sort of a small business that just sharpens like knife blades and things like that to have the blade sharpened. I would really hate to throw away blades simply because I can't have them sharpened. But if you take care of them and you're not cutting like plastic and you're cutting within the range that the cutter is designed for. Like this one's designed for up to like 200 pages. I cut under that. I'm not going to cut 200 page books. And I can use this to cut cardboard, but I'm not going to cut any kind of plastic or anything. I'm just going to try to use the blade appropriately. But yeah, so this is my blade cutter. And as you can see in the PDF copy, there's a little white border going around the book. That is what I want to cut off because I want it to look more finished. And I don't want it to look too obvious that it's just a PDF copy. So here's the book after I cut it. And one of the challenges dealing with PDF copies of scanned material is you're dependent on the person that scanned it, that they sized everything correctly. I can let you know for sure that the person that scanned these did not make everything line up correctly, so some of the tops of my pages got cut off, and when we go back to video I will show you what happened with that, but it's not that big of a deal. And then because I am making the covers of my books, I'm going to have to punch the holes for the spiral binding when I'm done. So this is a leather punch, and that is what I use to punch the holes in my covers after the pages were glued down and everything like that. And then here, this is my book press. Like, I don't have a fancy book press. I don't have room for a fancy book press. The paper cutter to me was more important than a book press. This is what I use. I just use some weights and a piece of wood and some parchment paper underneath to absorb some of the moisture from whatever material, whatever I'm using for binding the paper to the cover. And in the next video, we'll get more into detail about making covers because it needs to be a separate video because of everything that needs to take place. But this is what I'm using for my book press, just for reference. So that was kind of a run through of everything I did to prep my book. So like I said, I'm going to talk about putting covers on in a separate video because it is a process unto itself. But when I was talking about using PDFs and scanned copies, you're dependent on the person that made the scans, that they sized everything correctly. And you're going to notice in my book that I've cut off a little bit of the top and the bottom here because I used the white border around the cover as my guide. And it was not sized the same as the pages. Like here you can see writing because a little bit got cut off. So that is one of the downsides of using scanned copies. But you know what? I would rather have that little bit of mistake versus spending, I don't know, $60, $50 for buying the official rulebook because that's what people are asking for on eBay. And to be honest with you, it's not worth it. It's a great game. It's a wonderful game, but I am not willing to spend that kind of money on it. The books that I'm going to make first for this Warhammer Quest project are going to be the little character books that are part of the expansion packs. And I got two piles here. So the pile on the left are all of the original scanned copies from the Warhammer Quest expansion. The pile on the right are all the ones that Little Monk has created that don't exist in the product line. And he actually went through and made the 4 characters that come with the core game and a lot of custom characters that have never been produced. So I'm going to bind these books separately. And the reason for that is the Little Monk pages, the prints are phenomenal. Like everything is sized up good. The print quality is fantastic. Amazing art. Everything I need is here. It's all updated information and it just looks a lot better. And I just don't want to mix the two because the ones that I got offline that I scanned, obviously the covers are hard to scan and get a good look. And some of the scans aren't that nice. They're a little blurry, especially for my eyes. And they're not all going to be sized up the same. So I'm going to have some problems when I cut these pages that I'm going to have to cut into some of the art or the scan itself. I won't be cutting in any of the text, but maybe at the top and the bottom, which is just the header information, which isn't important to me because these are scanned copies. And the other thing is I scaled them up. This is an original Warhammer Quest Warrior Priest booklet. I got this from my friend Tim because this was the only one I couldn't find online. So I had to scan it into my computer myself so that I could add it to my book. But I'm 52 and I can't read this text. This text is super small. And yeah, I got glasses and all that, but 9 times out of 10 I forget them. And I just can't read that. And it's almost stupidly small. I understand why GW did this because it needed to fit into the packaging and they didn't want to fold it or anything like that. So they just printed it small. So I didn't like that size. So using the scanned copies allows me to make the pages larger so I can actually read them. And because these are books that I make myself, I can also make notes into these or highlight certain sections because I have no financial, other than the printing and my time for binding, there's no real value to these. Like I can't sell them. So it's just something that I can do. That's one of the advantages of making your own books is you're not destroying anything that will ever have any value, ever go up in value. And you can't do anything with it. So you might as well write in it, note it, dog-ear it, do whatever you want. So it's one of the advantages. But these are going to be the first books that I'm going to make. So far for the Little Monk books, the ones that I printed out are the Barbarian, the Dwarf, the Elf, the Pit Fighter, which I also have the Pit Fighter in here, but this one is more up to date and has some changes to it. So that's why I wanted to have that. And I also have the Wizard. Those are the ones I printed out so far. I'm going to print out some more to add to this book, but I've got to be mindful not to make the book too thick. For perfect binding, especially from a crafting standpoint, if you make it too thick, you might have problems and the pages might fall apart. So I want to be mindful of that. I think I'm at the right size with this book because this is going to be a pretty thick book, but I think I'm good here. So that's why I'm only going to add a few more to this one. But yeah, in the next video, we're going to start diving into making these books, and it's going to be a step-by-step process. I'm also going to be sharing other videos to YouTube channels where I learned how to do bookbinding like this so that you can learn from some experts. I'm a hack. I'm just a crafter. I do this myself, but I do a pretty good job. But yeah, so I'll share some videos like that. So that's that. So let's now talk about the Hall of the Hag Queen. When I did my review of all the Little Monk books, this was not included in that review. It was not sent to me. Little Monk watched the video, noticed that I didn't have this in the box that he sent me, so he went out of his way and sent me this copy. Hall of the Hag Queen, the adventure is awesome. This is a full adventure. When we looked at the adventures in the previous video, you noticed that they were, staple bound, they were short. This is glue bound, and this is a heck of an adventure. It's got so much information in it, and I believe, talking through comments with Little Monk, this is how he wants all those adventures to be. So the ones that I've already reviewed, those are like basic adventures. And as time goes on and he has got time to do it, he wants to improve on those and make them at this level. So what exactly do we get here? So we got your table of contents. We got a lot of information to go over. You're going to get your introduction, the contents that you need, which is going to be the cards and boards that you need to print out. You get pictures of the miniatures that are from Citadel and also pictures of the board sections that need to be printed out. You get the basic information about this supplement, and then you get background information, lots of background information. So you understand why you're doing this. You got your adversaries for the Hall of the Hag Queen. And here's our Hag Queen. You got great art, very reminiscent of some of the old GW art. Love it. I don't know I doubt this is actual GW art. I think this is probably all fan art. But yeah, you got your adversaries, and then you get all of your adventures and the rules for the different board sections. So this is important because there's elevations in some of these, so there's some special rules on combat and just good information. And it's just, I read through all this. It's just fantastic. You've got your 6 adventures that you can roll your d6 and decide which adventure you're going to go on to. And then section 2 gets into more advanced rules. So this would be what all the previous adventures look like. You got all your basic rules. This one adds in all these advanced rules, which you have an advanced monster table that you can fight on, and you got like unexpected table encounters. So this is like if you're doing more of the role-playing stuff. You got a traps table. You've got dungeon room events. So you just got all these other charts that you get to roll on just to add a little bit more to your game, which is just awesome. You have some magic items from the Dark Elves. And then you have a whole bestiary section. So now it's not just our adversaries, but now we have a bestiary for all of the other tables that you can roll on and add to the game. And it just keeps going. There's so much content in this one book. And then you have just tables for the different levels of the monster encounters. I believe it goes all the way to 10. Yes, it goes all the way to level 10. And then you have your monster profiles, really detailed information. And this adventure book is right there with any of the GW stuff. And then you have a game master section. So if you're running this as an RPG and you have a game master, you have a section for the game master to go over, and you got some stories information to go over, like you would read out to them. And then you have pre-made dungeons. Like, this is just awesome. So you're taking all your material, you can pre-make the dungeons, kind of like a Descent, kind of, in my opinion, where in Descent you have a game master and you lay down one tile at a time, kind of doing the same thing here. You got all the different rooms and all the different encounters that come up, but it keeps going. You get more of them. So you have other adventures you can run. So this is a pretty flushed out adventure book that you can use in 2 ways. You can use it in the traditional way of playing Warhammer Quest, or you can run this as an RPG, which is awesome. You could probably run this solo. You might need to, hide some of the information from yourself somehow, but it could be done. And then you have some handouts, and then you have some reference sheets in the back. So yeah, that's Hall of the Hag Queen, and this is one of the best supplements available through Little Monk because it's completed. This is how he envisions all of his supplements to look like in the future. It's just obviously going to take time because you can see how much work went into this product. And it's just awesome. And speaking of Little Monk, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the Facebook page. He is actually going to do a print run of all the cards. It's going to be all the cards except, I believe, Treasure Pack number 3, which will be done at another time. If you want to purchase the cards instead of making your own, you can just order them from him. Obviously, these are going to be his interpretation of the cards. They're not going to be scanned copies of the original. And it's a lot of cards. It's like thousands of cards. It's expensive. I think the current rate for it is $270. But if you think about the quality you're going to get, if the quality of the cards are anything like the quality of these books, you're going to get top-notch cards. And this way you don't have to worry about trying to buy anything on the internet and spend ridiculous amounts of money for it. And you can have it all, and it could speed up your crafting project instead of trying to make all those cards yourself. I will be purchasing them and reviewing them on the channel when I get them. That was an update and everything that I'm working on. So the next video we'll start diving deeper into bookbinding. We're going to make the text block, which is all the pages that are going to go inside, and then we're going to make a cover for that, put it all together, and make a book. So I hope you're ready for those videos. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye.